Who has the highest favorables of any candidate right now? DR.BEN Carson. Who has the lowest unfavorables? DR.BEN Carson. I think we agree that DR.BEN Carson is a national treasure. Help me welcome him now, DR.BEN Carson.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, all of our wonderful supporters. Thank you for all of the staff who have just done an amazing job here. And, you know, there are news people here who think that I'm going to make a concession speech. Now, this is just the beginning speech that we're going to have here. That's the beginning. You know, it's interesting, but when this thing started, there were 17 candidates. There are only 6 now, and I'm still one of them. And I'm not going anywhere. Now, you know, we have a little bit of a different situation than many of the other candidates who are funded in different ways, but we're funded by we the people. And I will steadfastly continue to refuse to take money from special interest groups and billionaires who want to influence me. Those people are not looking for the good of America. And those are the same people, I guarantee you, who will continue to influence America if we put people in office who are beholden to them. That will not change. We have to be willing to make dramatic changes. We can't just mess around the edges. We got to go to the heart of the matter, because our nation is very close to going off the cliff. And what I am attempting to do as a true outsider, and when I say a true outsider, I mean I've never tried to buy anybody or sell anybody or do anything to influence what was going on in government for my own purposes. That's an insider. You can call them what you want. But the fact of the matter is, what we need is recognition of the fact that the way our country was designed, it was designed for citizen statesmen, not career politicians. And right now, there is a political class that consists of the Washington establishment and the news media and the pundits, and they believe that they have complete control of our country. They only have complete control if we give them complete control. It is we the people, who really have the power. The problem is, if we don't exercise the power, then they continue to have the control. And this is a message that I'm going to be taking across the nation to try to help the people of America recognize that we still have the ability to dictate the course of our country. We still have the ability to save it for the next generation. We can do it. If we continue down the same path that we have been going, that will never happen. And, you know, I never really actually intended to get into the political world, I must admit. And since I've gotten into it, what I have discovered is really quite disgusting. I mean, the engine that drives Washington, D.C., and that drives our country is full of filth and corruption and favors and intricate relationships. And they will do anything, and I do mean anything, to maintain their power and to maintain their position. However, God is in charge. And, you know, I really thought about this long and hard before I got into it, because after a long and arduous career in neurosurgery and really wanting to relax and have fun with my wife and just have a good time for the rest of my life, and then those people started bothering me. You know, every place I went to make a speech, there were all these people out there with signs, "Run, Ben, run." And then I started getting all of these petitions, and then there were so many people saying, "You can do this." And at first I just said, just ignore it and it'll go away. But it did not go away. And I don't think it's going to go away. And I truly believe that as time goes on, more and more people will actually begin to get very serious, and they will actually begin to look at actual policies and actual solutions to the problems rather than just rhetoric and loud and boisterous speech. And when that happens, I think you're going to start to see a significant change in what's going on in our country. The tide will begin to change because the situation that we are in right now is so serious. I mean, when you talk about the fiscal gap, the vast majority of Americans have no idea what you're talking about. The fiscal gap is what is going to destroy us as a nation. And that's why no Washington politicians talk about the fiscal gap. But since I'm not a Washington politician, I can talk about it. You know, the unfunded liabilities that we owe, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all the governmental programs, all the governmental agencies and sub-agencies, versus the amount of money we have coming back in through taxes and other revenue sources, those numbers should be essentially equal if you are fiscally responsible. If you're not, a gap develops. Bring that forward to today's dollars. You're talking about a fiscal gap. It sits at over $200 trillion. So if somebody magically came along today and said, I'm going to give you a check to pay off your national debt of $19 trillion, we would all be dancing in the streets. But the fact of the matter is, we would still be in huge trouble. This is the kind of thing that is not known by the American people. And that's why our founders were so insistent upon a good education and a well-informed populace. They said if we ever become anything other than a well-informed populace, the nature of the country will change because people would be easily manipulated. Well, this is exactly what's going on in our country today. People are being easily manipulated and told what they're supposed to think and who they're supposed to follow, when in fact we have these tremendous brains and with these enormous frontal lobes. Have you ever stopped to imagine why the human being has these big frontal lobes? Because that's where you engage in rational thought processing. That's where you are able to extract information from the past and the present, analyze it, and project it into the future with rational thought processing and rational plans. Now, you don't need those big frontal lobes if all you're going to do is listen to the pundits and have other people tell you what you're supposed to do. You know, you could train some other thing to do that, okay? You don't need this that we have in order to do that. And that's something that I think we're going to have to begin to emphasize to people. We also need to understand the situation in terms of our educational deficit. We have an all-voluntary military right now. We depend upon the populace to volunteer. Between the ages of 17 and 24, 71% of people who volunteer for the military are rejected. That only 29% are accepted. The ones that are rejected for mental, physical, or educational deficits. Of those three, educational deficits is far and away the biggest one. High school graduates cannot pass a simple examination. Basic math skills, basic communication skills. What does that tell you about what is happening in our country? These are high school graduates. And what is happening is we are dumbing down our population. And, you know, everybody is a good student. Everybody gets a certificate. Everybody gets a gold star. I mean, this is killing us. And we've got to get away from this progressivism and this political correctness and this stupidity, because we have traditionally very smart and innovative people. And we have to start finding a way to develop them, recognizing that we only have 330 million people, and we have to compete with China with 1.4 billion, India with 1.1 billion. We cannot afford to waste any of our people. We have to develop every single one of them. And we can't have 20+% of people entering high school and not graduating. We cannot have 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prison inmates. We have got to develop all of those young people. For every one of those people that we keep from going down that path of self-destruction, that's one less person that we have to be afraid of or protect our families from or pay for in the penal system or the welfare system. One more tax-paying member of society who may discover the cure for cancer or a new energy source. We cannot afford to waste any of our people. It is absolutely essential. And we must begin to really understand what true compassion is all about. True compassion is not keeping people in a dependent position. True compassion is providing a ladder of opportunity so that people can climb out of dependency and become part of the fabric of America. And that is really what conservatism is all about. And we must stop allowing the progressives to paint us as people who don't care about the other people in our society. That is absolutely the opposite. They're the ones who don't care. I think they are the ones who keep people enslaved so that they can cultivate their votes. And that is just the opposite of compassion. And I think we're just going to have to come out and tell it like it is. They're not going to like it very much, but we're just going to have to begin to put it in their face, because they're always putting it in our face. And I think we most definitely have to reject political correctness and not allow them to tell us what we can do. And most importantly, you know, when we say the Pledge of Allegiance to this flag, we say we are one nation under God. We must not allow the secular progressives to remove God from our lives. We cannot do that. And that is a war that I am very willing to fight until the last breath in my body, because I believe that the reason that this nation rose to the pinnacle of the world in record time is because we paid homage to God. And we also recognized that there were values and principles that were worth preserving. And we recognized that there was such a thing as right and such a thing as wrong. And we must get back to a point in this country where we recognize that we do have a culture, an American culture, an American way. Not a Republican way, not a Democrat way, but an American way. This is what we must come to understand. And we have to stop fighting each other. You know, what we really need to do is we have to start sitting down and having rational conversations about our differences. And when you have a rational conversation, very often, if one side or the other side is wrong, it becomes apparent. So, for instance, you sit down and have a rational conversation about free college tuition for everybody. Okay? And, you know, the rational side will say, who's going to pay for it? The irrational side will say, well, we have a lot of rich people, and we can just take the money from them. And then the rational side will say, what makes you think they're just going to fork their money over to you? And then the irrational side will say, we'll make them do it. Which side do you think will win? And what we have to do is help the populace to understand that when somebody comes along promising you pie in the sky, this is just a technique to get elected. And when they promote class warfare, they know good and well that if they could take the evil 1% and ship them away someplace, ship them to another country who would be glad to have them, that would not solve their problem, because everybody else could just sit around the campfire and sing Kumbaya, because there wouldn't be anything else left, because the people who are creating everything would be gone. You know, we need to get away from this whole class warfare stuff. What we really need to be thinking about is how do we create an atmosphere that will allow those creative people in our society to create opportunities for everybody else. I don't think, quite frankly, that most Americans mind the fact that there are rich Americans as long as they have the ability to become rich themselves. It's only when you shut that off. It's only when you shut that off. And see, that's what the progressives do. They try to convince a whole bunch of people that it is shut off, that somebody is keeping them from achieving, and that therefore you have a right to persecute those people and to try to take what they have. That is known as socialism. And we have got to start reminding people of what socialism is. I think a lot of people think socialism is caring for the social welfare of other people. That's not what it is. And a lot of young people, I think, probably don't fully realize what it is. But we know what it is. And it was Thomas Jefferson who really said that we would reach this point in our country where we would have allowed the government to reverse the roles of the people and the government. This country was designed with the people at the pinnacle and the government beneath the people for the purpose of facilitating life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What has happened is the government has become the pinnacle power, and it now dictates to the people. This is something that absolutely must be reversed. This is not something that the political class is going to be happy about me saying, be they Republicans or Democrats. That's why they try to act like I don't exist. But the fact of the matter is, I do exist, and along with you, we are the people, and we will take America back. Thank you very much.
I like the